Hollywood's hidden grudges, the actors Richard Widmark couldn't stand. A legendary actor, on his deathbed, finally ready to speak the truth. Not about his greatest roles, not about his proudest moments, but about the men he worked alongside, the icons America worshipped, who he believed represented everything poisonous about Hollywood's so-called golden era. Richard Widmark wasn't your typical Hollywood star. While others played the game, schmoozing at parties and biting their tongues, Widmark kept a mental ledger. And before he left this world, that ledger became a list of names that would shock anyone who thought they knew classic Hollywood. These weren't small-time players or forgotten has-beens. These were titans, legends, the very men whose faces defined an entire generation of cinema. And Widmark? He couldn't stand them. Richard Widmark built his career on playing characters you couldn't quite trust: the psychotic killer in Kiss of Death, the morally ambiguous detective, the soldier wrestling with darkness. But here's what audiences didn't realize. That intensity wasn't just acting, it was authenticity. Widmark demanded truth in every frame, expected professionalism from every collaborator, and refused to compromise his principles for anyone. Hollywood's golden age appeared pristine from the outside, encompassing all glamour, sophistication, and artistry. But Widmark saw what happened behind the curtain. He witnessed ego disguised as genius. He watched betrayal dressed up as survival. He endured disrespect masked as stardom. And unlike his peers who played politics, Widmark kept score. Today, we're revealing the 5 names that topped his list. These weren't casual dislikes or petty jealousies. These were fundamental disagreements about what it meant to be an artist, a colleague, and a human being. This is the story Hollywood tried to bury, told through the eyes of a man who refused to stay silent any longer. Let's meet the actors Richard Widmark believed embodied Hollywood's darkest truth.
Number 1. John Wayne, When Power Crushes Talent. The year was 1960. John Wayne wasn't just making a movie, he was building a monument to himself. The Alamo represented everything Wayne stood for: American heroism, traditional values, and his own unwavering authority. He wasn't just the star, he was the director, the producer, the final word on everything. And when your name is John Wayne, nobody questions you. Nobody except Richard Widmark. When Widmark's name came up for the crucial role of Jim Bowie, Wayne made a decision that would ignite decades of resentment. In front of cast and crew, Wayne delivered a verdict that landed like a slap. Widmark wasn't big enough for the part. Not physically, metaphorically. In Wayne's empire, Widmark was being publicly reminded of his station. Now, most actors would have walked away and swallowed the humiliation, found another project. But Widmark understood something Wayne didn't. That quiet dignity often speaks louder than chest-thumping bravado. Widmark accepted the role anyway, and then he did something brilliant. He let his performance speak. When the Alamo premiered, something unexpected happened. Critics didn't just praise Widmark's Jim Bowie, they preferred it to Wayne's own performance. Where Wayne played heroism as broad and obvious, Widmark found nuance, complexity, and humanity. He transformed a supporting role into the emotional center of the film, and he did it without raising his voice or demanding attention. Wayne never acknowledged it, not publicly, not privately. He simply went cold. But here's what made Widmark's resentment permanent. It wasn't about ego. Widmark didn't need Wayne's approval. What he couldn't forgive was how Wayne wielded power. In Widmark's philosophy, authority should elevate everyone involved. It should protect the craft and nurture talent. Wayne, in contrast, used power to establish hierarchy, to remind others of their place, to ensure nobody ever outshone him. From that moment forward, their relationship existed in name only. They never worked together again. When Wayne's name came up in conversation, Widmark found reasons to change the subject. He didn't need to wage a public war. His silence said everything. To Widmark, John Wayne represented Hollywood's most dangerous delusion, that power and talent were the same, that volume equaled depth, that dominating a set proved your worth as an artist. It didn't, and Widmark spent the rest of his career proving exactly that.
Number 2. Elia Kazan, The Unforgivable Betrayal. Some wounds never heal. Some betrayals cut so deep that time can't touch them. For Richard Widmark, Elia Kazan represented the worst kind of betrayal, the kind where someone you trust destroys others to save themselves. The 1950s transformed Hollywood into a war zone. The House Un-American Activities Committee came hunting for communists, and suddenly everyone was suspect. Careers evaporated overnight. Friendships became dangerous. The unspoken rule was simple: protect each other, stay loyal, survive together. Elia Kazan shattered that rule. When Kazan decided to testify before HUAC, naming names and destroying colleagues to save his own career, something broke in Widmark that never repaired. This wasn't some distant figure. Kazan was one of cinema's most respected directors, someone Widmark had admired, even considered a kindred spirit. They understood each other's dedication to craft, or so Widmark thought. The moment Kazan spoke those names, Widmark made a decision that would define the rest of their relationship: complete erasure. He didn't write angry letters or give bitter interviews. He did something colder. He deleted Kazan from his world entirely. Friends noticed immediately. Mention Kazan's name in conversation, and Widmark would either pivot away or go completely silent. It was eerie. One colleague recalled Widmark's words, "I don't collaborate with men who sacrifice others for convenience." Not anger, statement of fact. What gutted Widmark wasn't just the act, it was Kazan's justification. Years later, Kazan defended his testimony, insisting he'd done what was necessary, what anyone would have done. To Widmark, that rationalization confirmed everything. Kazan didn't just betray people once, he built a philosophy around it. He normalized it. He taught Hollywood that fear justified any action, even destroying innocent lives. Widmark told a friend something that captured his disgust perfectly. Once you convince yourself betrayal is acceptable, you'll find new reasons to betray. That wasn't just about Kazan anymore. It was about what Kazan's choice taught an entire industry. The ultimate test came in 1999, when the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences gave Kazan a Lifetime Achievement Award. The room was split down the middle. Some stood and applauded, others sat in pointed silence. Widmark's position hadn't wavered in nearly 50 years. Time didn't soften his judgment. If anything, it crystallized it. To Richard Widmark, Elia Kazan proved that Hollywood's golden age didn't collapse because of outside pressure. It rotted from within, destroyed by people who chose self-preservation over integrity. And that sin, choosing yourself when others needed you most, was something Widmark would never forgive. Number 3. Frank Sinatra, When Charm Replaces Commitment. Frank Sinatra entered every room as if he owned it. Actually, let's be honest, he usually did. By the time he starred opposite Richard Widmark in The Detective in 1968, Sinatra had reached untouchable status. He could show up late, demand changes, call the shots, and nobody dared push back. Everyone except Widmark. Their clash wasn't explosive, it was something far more damaging, a slow-burning contempt that revealed itself in contrasts. While Sinatra strolled onto set whenever he felt like it, Widmark arrived early. While Sinatra wanted scenes wrapped quickly so he could leave, Widmark meticulously prepared every moment. While Sinatra relied on natural charisma to carry him through, Widmark studied, rehearsed, and refined until everything felt authentic. The breaking point came when Sinatra casually suggested rushing through a scene Widmark had spent days preparing. It wasn't a request, it was an assumption. The set would bend to Frank Sinatra because it always did. Widmark went along with it in that moment, delivering the lines efficiently and professionally, but something shifted. Coworkers noticed Widmark pulling back, creating invisible distance.
Later, when asked about the experience, Widmark delivered one of his most devastating assessments. Charm is seductive, but it's not the same as commitment. That line spread through Hollywood like wildfire because everyone knew exactly who he meant. Widmark wasn't criticizing Sinatra's talent, he was attacking his work ethic. In Widmark's worldview, being talented didn't excuse showing up unprepared. Being famous didn't justify making everyone else accommodate your schedule. Being Frank Sinatra didn't mean the rules didn't apply. What frustrated Widmark most was how the system enabled it. Studios adjusted production schedules around Sinatra's whims. Directors accepted his shortcuts. Co-stars learned to work around him. The entire machine bent to service one man's convenience, and everyone pretended that was normal. To Widmark, it was insulting, not to him personally, but to the craft itself. Acting requires discipline, preparation, and respect for collaborators. It demanded you show up not just physically, but emotionally, ready to commit fully to the scene. Sinatra treated it like another appointment in his calendar, something to check off between recording sessions and casino appearances. After filming wrapped, they never worked together again. No dramatic falling out, no public feud. Widmark simply never sought Sinatra out, never praised him in interviews, never acknowledged their collaboration unless directly asked, and even then, his responses stayed carefully neutral. The ultimate insult? Widmark's omission. He could list dozens of actors he respected, character actors nobody remembers, supporting players who brought professionalism to every role, but Frank Sinatra? Never. That absence communicated more than any angry quote ever could. To Richard Widmark, Sinatra represented everything wrong with celebrity culture, the belief that fame exempted you from basic professionalism, that charisma could substitute for preparation, that the world should revolve around your convenience, and Widmark refused to validate that delusion with even a shred of respect.
Number 4. Marlon Brando. Genius or glorified chaos? Here's where it gets interesting. On paper, Richard Widmark and Marlon Brando should have been allies. Both were serious actors in an era of matinee idols. Both brought intensity that intimidated co-stars. Both rejected Hollywood's superficiality. They should have understood each other perfectly. Instead, Widmark watched Brando's career with growing disgust. By the height of his fame, Brando's methods had become legendary and legendarily difficult. He refused to memorize lines, forcing crews to hide cue cards everywhere, on furniture, on props, even taped to other actors' bodies. He improvised without warning, forcing everyone to react on the fly. He reshaped scenes mid-take, demanding others abandon their preparation to chase his spontaneity. Hollywood called it genius. Widmark called it selfish. The stories filtered back from every Brando set, exhausted co-stars trying to anticipate his next move, directors spending more time managing Brando than directing the film, productions running over schedule and over budget because one actor refused to work like everyone else. What the industry celebrated as brave artistic exploration, Widmark saw as one man forcing everyone else to absorb his chaos. At an industry gathering where others gushed about Brando's brilliance, Widmark finally spoke up. Not loudly, not angrily, just clearly. Some actors need chaos to feel creative. I prefer discipline. The room went quiet. Everyone understood. That wasn't admiration, that was condemnation. In Widmark's philosophy, acting was collaborative. You owed your co-stars preparation so they could prepare. You owed the director consistency so they could shape performances. You owed the crew respect for their time and effort. Brando's approach violated all of that, placing the burden entirely on everyone else so he could chase whatever inspiration struck in the moment. What made it worse was how Hollywood rewarded it. Critics praised Brando's raw spontaneity. Directors competed to work with him despite the headaches.
The industry taught an entire generation that if you were talented enough, professionalism was optional. You could show up unprepared, derail everyone's work, and call it art. Widmark refused to participate in that mythology. When Brando's name surfaced in conversations, Widmark found other topics. When people asked his opinion on Brando's performances, he gave minimal, neutral responses. He didn't engage in public feuds. He did something colder. He withdrew all validation. And as Brando's later career spiraled into excess and unpredictability, as his reputation shifted from genius to liability, Widmark felt vindicated. The chaos that Hollywood had celebrated eventually consumed Brando himself. To Widmark, that wasn't tragedy, it was an inevitable consequence. Richard Widmark believed great acting came from discipline, not disruption, from preparation, not improvisation. Respect your collaborators, not forcing them to navigate your unpredictability. Brando represented everything Widmark rejected, and he never pretended otherwise.
Number 5. Kirk Douglas, the storm that consumed everything. Some actors fill a scene. Kirk Douglas consumed it. While Richard Widmark believed in balance, giving and taking, listening and responding, Douglas operated on a different principle entirely: domination. And that created an inevitable collision. Hollywood thought pairing them would generate electricity. They were right, but they misunderstood what kind. This wasn't creative friction. It was incompatibility at the most fundamental level. From their first interactions in overlapping Hollywood circles, Widmark noticed Douglas's pattern. Douglas didn't wait for his moment in a scene. He seized everyone's moments. He delivered lines louder than written, stretched emotional beats beyond their intention, and positioned himself closer to the camera to dominate the frame. When directors suggested restraint, Douglas reportedly snapped back, "If you want small, hire someone else." That line reached Widmark, and it told him everything he needed to know. During one particularly unbalanced scene, Widmark turned to a colleague and said, quietly but intentionally within earshot, "There's only room for one storm in a scene." It was a declaration of war fought through controlled professionalism. While Douglas escalated, Widmark remained measured. The contrast made Douglas's intensity look excessive, almost desperate. But Widmark's real response was more permanent: withdrawal. He declined projects where Douglas was attached, even significant roles. No explanations, no public drama. He simply removed himself from Douglas's orbit completely. What disturbed Widmark wasn't just Douglas's intensity, it was the philosophy behind it. Douglas seemed to believe that overpowering everyone else proved your strength as an actor, that occupying all the oxygen in a scene demonstrated your talent, that forcing others to shrink made you larger. To Widmark, that was fundamentally wrong. Great acting required listening, responding, and creating space for others to contribute. It meant understanding that film was a collective medium where everyone's contribution mattered. Douglas treated it like a solo competition where only one person could win. Hollywood loved Douglas for exactly what Widmark hated. The industry celebrated actors who dominated, who commanded attention, who refused to be contained. Studios marketed that aggressive energy as proof of artistic power. Critics praised it as a commitment. Widmark saw it differently. He saw an actor so insecure in his own talent that he needed to diminish everyone else, so desperate to be seen as powerful that he confused volume with depth, so trapped in his own ego that he couldn't recognize the damage he caused to every production, every scene, every collaboration. The two men never reconciled. They never found common ground. They simply existed in separate Hollywood universes. Douglas in the spotlight demanding attention, Widmark in the shadows crafting performances that didn't need to announce themselves. To Richard Widmark, Kirk Douglas represented the most seductive and dangerous myth in Hollywood, that being the biggest presence in the room meant you were the best, that drowning out everyone else proved your worth, that ego and talent were the same thing. They weren't.
And Widmark spent his career proving that quiet excellence could be more powerful than any storm.
Richard Widmark's list wasn't about settling scores or nursing grudges. It was about identifying a pattern of behavior that Hollywood not only tolerated, but celebrated. These 5 men represented different failures of character, different ways that ego, fear, and ambition corrupted what should have been pure, the craft of acting itself. John Wayne showed how power corrupts when it's used to diminish rather than elevate. Elia Kazan proved that fear can transform decent people into betrayers. Frank Sinatra demonstrated how fame can become an excuse for unprofessionalism. Marlon Brando revealed how genius can mask selfishness. Kirk Douglas embodied how the ego disguises itself as strength. And the truly disturbing part? Hollywood's golden age wasn't destroyed by these men. It was built on them. The industry rewarded their behavior, celebrated their excesses, and made them legends precisely because they embodied the values the system actually cared about: power over collaboration, survival over integrity, and stardom over craft. Widmark saw through it. He recognized that the same qualities audiences admired, Wayne's authority, Kazan's success, Sinatra's confidence, Brando's spontaneity, Douglas's intensity, came at devastating costs to everyone around them. And unlike his peers who stayed silent to protect their careers, Widmark kept his ledger. The question isn't whether these men were talented. They obviously were. The question is whether talent excuses everything else, whether being great at your job justifies how you treat people, whether Hollywood's golden age was actually golden or just convincingly performed. Richard Widmark spent his career answering those questions with his choices, the roles he accepted, the collaborators he respected, the standards he maintained. And before he died, he made sure his answers would outlive him. So here's what I want to know. Which of these revelations shocked you most? Did you have any idea that behind Hollywood's glamorous surface, these legendary actors behaved this way? And more importantly, do you think their behavior would survive in today's industry, or would social media and modern accountability have ended their careers? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me which actor on this list surprised you, and whether you think Widmark was right to hold these grudges, or if he should have let it go. If you found this story fascinating, you need to hit that like button right now, because we've barely scratched the surface of Hollywood's buried secrets. There are dozens more stories like this, hidden conflicts and shocking betrayals that the industry worked hard to conceal, and I'm going to reveal them all. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single episode. Next time, we're diving into an even darker corner of old Hollywood, a secret so explosive that the studio system nearly collapsed trying to keep it buried. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, the most interesting stories are the ones they tried to hide, and we're just getting started uncovering them.